We'll make a start. Welcome again to the ACT branch of the Australian Institute of International Affairs. My name is Heath McMichael and I'm branch president. Now, it's clear Britain's exit from the European Union has been a long and drawn out affair. One of the sticking points has been a hard trade border on the island of Ireland, which is probably easier read than said, I might say, but the post-Brexit deal having left Northern Ireland bound by EU rules on imports, which has been quite a bit of consternation to Northern Irish importers at least. But how has Brexit had an impact on the Republic of Ireland? To help us understand this issue, we are very fortunate tonight to have with us the Ambassador of the Republic of Ireland to Australia, His Excellency Mr. Brendan O'Quilly. The Ambassador will discuss Ireland's commitment to the EU and how Ireland was able to secure an outcome on Brexit in line with its interests. The Ambassador is very well known in Canberra, I might say, not least for hosting great St. Patrick's Day parties at his residence, at least until recent times. He is a busy head of mission with responsibilities for Fiji, Nauru, PNG and Solomon Islands, in addition to Australia. With wide experience in British, Irish and Northern Ireland affairs, he's very well qualified to speak on his topic. He has served in Ireland's permanent representation to the EU and in EU-related assignments in the Department of Foreign Affairs in Dublin. His previous diplomatic assignments included Boston, New York, London and Rome. Now, Ambassador O'Quilly is not just a master of diplomacy, he also has postgraduate qualifications in, amongst other things, intriguingly, the Irish language. Following the talk, we will have questions as per our normal routine from both our in-house audience and also from online participants via the Q&A function. We will aim to get through as many questions as possible as time permits and finish at 7 p.m. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Brendan to make his remarks. Thank you.
Agus gur maithacha ar fad an áthas ar an bheith seolas AIIA a nacht le caintfaí brat imacht agus an tionachar a bheith sin sin ar Éireann. Before I begin, can I just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respect to their elders past, present, and those in formation. There's two issues I will only gently touch on today. First is, as Heath, COVID-19. I'm not going to talk about it, just to say, obviously it frames a lot of what's happening currently in Ireland and on the island of Ireland. And COVID-19 has had a much more negative impact there. Sadly, we have over 6,000 deaths between Ireland, North and South. So I want to people, anybody involved here in the frontline business of combating COVID-19 pandemic, but certainly the people back at home, I want to recognize their tremendous efforts on our behalf. I see my colleague, the Ambassador of Norway here. It's the other topic I'm not going to mention, or not going to discuss in the Foreign Affairs agenda, is the Security Council. Both Norway and Ireland had the great honour of being elected to the Security Council and took up service on the 1st of January this year, in recognition of which I'm wearing my Security Council socks. As you can see, I'm very subtle in my messaging, my socks. So before getting into the nuts and bolts of Brexit, I thought it would be useful to give you an insight into Ireland's identity and commitment as a member state of the European Union. So my two opening remarks look at the historical relationship between Ireland and the European Union. The third one is a more contemporary reflection on how Irish people view the EU. So firstly, I want you to join me on time travel to the French coast in the 6th century. Here we meet an Irish traveller, a monk called Columbanus, who's beginning a brave and challenging journey across Europe. His peregrinations will end with the establishment by Columbanus and his disciples across Austria, France, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland of over 60 monasteries or places of European learning. These centres will in later centuries be credited with helping to forge a common European identity between once hostile neighbours. Indeed, Columbanus is credited as the first learned writer to use the Latin phrase totius Europaei, or in English, of all Europe, in a letter he wrote to Pope Gregory the Great in AD 600. Still on the theme of time traveling with St. Columbanus, I next want to land in Luxeuil in eastern France in July 1950, when the then French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, one of the so-called fathers of the European Union, is addressing a Congress to celebrate the 1400th anniversary of the birth of the aforementioned Columbanus. And Minister Schuman, I quote Minister Schuman, who says, St. Columbanus, this illustrious Irishman who left his country for voluntary exile, willed and achieved spiritual union between the principal countries, European countries of his time. He is the patron saint of all those who seek to build a united Europe. Okay, so just in case you think I'm leading everyone to believe that Ireland's trust and confidence in the European Union goes back, is left behind in the 6th century, my third reference point is slightly more up to date. Irish public opinion is consistently shown as the most positive of all EU member states when it comes to trust in the EU and its institutions. The Eurobarometer, which conducts EU opinion polls, published results in October 2020, which recorded that the Irish at 73.5% have the most trust in the EU and its institutions. And when it comes to whether people have a positive image of the EU, we Irish are again at the top of the poll with over 71% saying they have a positive image of the EU. So I think it's clear from those statistics that Ireland's a very committed member of the European Union. We have benefited so much from its capacity to transform a country from a comparatively underdeveloped country to a much more successful part of the world economy. The evidence shows that Irish people know that our future is best served within the European Union, to which we remain completely committed. Ireland's membership of the European Economic Community began on the 1st of January 1973. In that year, the original 6 member states were joined by 3 new member states. They were Denmark, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. Joining the then EU brought a new and enhanced aspect of the relationship between Ireland and the United Kingdom. EEC membership had a profound, positive, and transformative impact on Ireland's economic welfare and future development. For nearly 40 years, Ireland and the UK's economic, political, and people-to-people relationship flourished and were enhanced by our joint membership of the European Union. Therefore, it was with profound regret that Ireland looked on while the UK voted in the Brexit referendum of 2016 to leave the EU. This decision came to its final fruition as the transition period ended and the UK left the EU on 31st December, and a new framework of the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement took effect. As he touched on, it's sad to say it's likely that Ireland will be the member state most affected by the UK's departure from the EU, given the closeness of our political and economic relationship with the United Kingdom. The UK is Ireland's 2nd largest trading partner, second only to the United States. So I'd like to quickly review how we got to where we are today in the Brexit scenario and what this changed situation means for Ireland. It seems difficult now to believe, but this time last year, the EU was only finalising our shared negotiating mandate for the negotiations. The actual negotiations began in earnest in March 2020. So this left only 9 months for the vast task of creating an entirely new legal framework for our relationship with the UK. This was no easy task, especially when the EU and UK approach these issues, what were often different levels of ambition and preferred outcomes, and given the severe logistical challenges occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. I have to say, in handling these difficult negotiations, we were very fortunate in the leadership provided to the EU negotiating team and in his role as head of European Commission's Task Force on Relations with the UK by Michel Barnier. Indeed, in appreciation of the role he played, the European Movement Ireland organisation chose him as the European of the Year, the first time it awarded this accolade to a non-Irish person. Of course, I'd also like to recognise now the tremendous solidarity Ireland received from other EU member states and their leaders in achieving this outcome. I'd also like to recognise the call by then President-elect, now President Joe Biden, proud Irish heritage, on Prime Minister Boris Johnson, stressing the importance of protecting Northern Ireland's peace deal in the Brexit process. For long periods of the negotiations, the EU and UK were far apart on many issues, including key issues of principle. Indeed, some doubted whether it would be possible to bridge the gap at all. Ireland's view was that a failure to reach agreement would have been a failure of politics and statecraft. Now that the trade and cooperation agreement is in place, it is perhaps too easy to forget the damaging alternative of a no-deal scenario would have been. But both sides worked hard to find arrangements that respected our different approaches. The agreement reached is fundamentally in Ireland's interest, not least because the alternative was effectively a breakdown of relations that would have had devastating consequences. There are areas in which Ireland would have wished to have closer cooperation and greater levels of ambition, not least with the outcome on fisheries. The EU offered a much closer trading relationship and a continuation of existing fishing arrangements. The UK preferred otherwise. With the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the Withdrawal Agreement and the Ireland-Northern Ireland Protocol now in place, Ireland's key Brexit objectives have been achieved. The Good Friday Agreement, or Belfast Agreement, has been protected, and the gains of the peace process, including avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland, are secure. It's important to say that the protocol was made necessary by Brexit in order to maintain an open border on the island of Ireland and to protect the Good Friday Agreement. This context has not changed. It is the Government of Ireland's view that calls for the removal of the protocol offer no viable alternative to the very real problems created by Brexit. Ireland sees many benefits and opportunities inherent in the protocol for Northern Ireland, and we've urged all parties there to work closely together to ensure that the protocol works and that disruption is minimised to the greatest extent possible. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement has ensured the best possible output for trade and the economy, including tariff-free and quota-free trade for qualifying goods, strong provisions to protect fair competition, and the protection of Ireland's place in the single market. We have a platform for continued cooperation in key areas, such as policing, energy, and transport, as well as the UK's continued participation in important EU programmes, including Peace Plus. The maintenance of the common travel area between Ireland and the UK is explicitly recognised in both agreements. The common travel area, I'll refer to as the CTA, predates our EU membership and is not dependent on it. The CTA's importance was rediscovered during the Brexit process when it was recognised that it was much more multifaceted and complex than previously thought, because it gave access to our respective citizens to public services, education, social security services, health services, and the right to work in our respective labour markets. It is recognised that the CTA will be a key enabler of post-Brexit cooperation and relations between Ireland and the UK. Since the UK departed the EU, there have been a number of high-level engagements between the EU and the UK, including a recent meeting between the European Vice President, Maros Sefcovic, and the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove. Both the EU and the UK have committed to implementing the protocol and working together in the spirit of collaboration, responsibility, and pragmatism. Ireland very much welcomes and supports this approach. Ireland also welcomes the constructive engagement with stakeholders by Commission Vice President Šefčovič over weeks and weeks in Ireland itself, including his appearance at the Irish Parliament's Joint Committee on European Affairs. The Vice President participated in an Irish Brexit stakeholder forum recently with our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney, and our Minister for European Affairs, Thomas Byrne. He's also participated in meetings with Northern Ireland business and civil society representatives. Ireland believes this active engagement demonstrates that the European Commission is listening carefully to the views on the ground and is committed to working with stakeholders and the UK to ensure the protocol works effectively. We don't dismiss the genuinely held concerns that have been expressed about some aspects of the protocol. Equally, Ireland has a responsibility to be honest about the best and only viable way to find workable, deliverable solutions within the framework of the protocol. Again, I would say calls for the removal of the protocol have offered no alternative to the very real problems created by Brexit. For our part, the Government of Ireland has been preparing for Brexit since the UK referendum of June 2016. We've made substantial investment in the infrastructure systems and staffing at airports and seaports and across our governmental system. Ireland has a view that no agreement could ever have replaced the UK's membership of the EU. As Ireland said on many occasions, the UK's insistence that it was leaving the single market meant that certain things were inevitable and unavoidable. Even with this agreement, there are new layers of complication in the EU-UK relationship that many, those in industry in particular, now have to adapt to, especially around processes for moving goods, sanitary and phytosanitary checks, health certificates, customs declarations, safety certificates, and more. This means that trade is far from as smooth as it would have been previously. Just to revisit, the Government of Ireland worked for several years, as I've been saying, to put the most comprehensive internal preparations in place for this change, from infrastructure to financial supports to step-by-step guides for new rules for citizens. Now that these changes are upon us, we continue to work hand in hand with stakeholders to manage the disruption and the new realities they face. Brexit means change and challenges, but we in Ireland face them with the support and resilience brought by our continued membership of the EU and its single market of more than 450 million consumers. In addition to the Irish government's expenditure, the European Commission has proposed to allocate 1.5 billion Australian dollars from the EU's Brexit Adjustment Reserve to Ireland. This represents 25% of the initial EU allocation of approximately 6 billion Australian dollars and shows, we believe, the recognition and solidarity of our fellow EU member states for the unique, adverse and disproportionate impact of Brexit on Ireland. After several years of sustained and unprecedented political and sectoral focus on Brexit, Ireland is now looking forward. We must play a leadership role in shaping and developing our common European Union. We must promote and protect the values that are at the core of our shared European project. We must collectively deepen our alliances and friendships with our fellow member states. We must build a thriving, innovative, and sustainable economic model through which our people can achieve their full potential. We are also in the process of reinventing our relationship with our closest neighbour, the United Kingdom. And the Government of Ireland will be focused on that as well as the EU challenges we face in the future. So just some more on the future Ireland-UK relationship. In recent remarks in Dublin on Taoiseach, that's our Prime Minister, Taoiseach Micheál Martin spoke of the need to develop new structures to underpin British-Irish relations after Brexit, with a particular focus and work to ensure reconciliation between the traditions on the island of Ireland. Taoiseach Martin spoke of a need to deepen cooperation in a range of challenges, from climate and biodiversity to recovery from COVID. Taoiseach envisaged new structures to underpin this engagement, with regular meetings at ministerial and senior official level to build relations and deliver on agreed goals. Taoiseach said the UK's departure from the European Union was, I quote, a moment of dramatic and profound change, which will require both the UK and Ireland to rethink and reinvigorate the British-Irish relationship. Now, some of you will be relieved to know I'm just about to finish. Don't all clap. So in concluding, and again revisiting the coincidence of history, 2021 is the centenary of the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which provided for the establishment of an Irish Free State. This resulted in the creation of the border on the island of Ireland, which has been the subject of such political attention during the Brexit negotiation 100 years later. I'll conclude with that. Looking forward to your questions. Thanks, everyone. That's the end.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm sure there's plenty of material there for questions. We might take a few from the floor here and then turn to our online participants. So we've got anybody who's willing to volunteer? Yes, please.
Just as a practical...
if you could just let us know who you are and your affiliation.
Oh, hi, my name's Peter Holland. I don't have an affiliation. What?
That's fine.
I'm a member of the Canberra branch.
That's excellent.
I'm just curious, on day one, what happened to all the British goods arriving in Ireland? Was there an ad hoc process? Was there everything planned in advance, and was it a smooth process? I'm curious, day one, British goods arriving in Ireland, how was that handled?
Well, no, it wasn't smooth, and it's not smooth. I suppose you've seen the photographs of 40-kilometre tailbacks at Dover and the equivalent the other side, and there have been complications in transit between Ireland, the island of Ireland, and the island of Britain. And it's a particular problem for us because I think something like 50% of our exports to mainland Europe went on the land bridge. It was quicker, it was cheaper, and particularly in produce and agricultural goods, which is we're major exporters, that was problematic. They're still being resolved. I had a couple of euphemisms in my script. I can't remember them now, but there are complications. There are issues to be resolved. So they're still there. So they haven't really been resolved, and the paperwork has been done. We had spent, as I said, since 2016, we have been very focused on it because we're very aware. I'm going to say our vulnerability, but our vulnerability in this context. So we were putting the positions in place. I don't want to be critical, but I don't know that the UK was as far forward on those issues as we were. So I think the problems are more on the island of Britain than they are on the island of Ireland. So it has been problematic, and it has continued to be problematic, and new issues arise. And sadly, COVID-19 has complicated it because now the truck drivers, they're being tested and their requirements, so whether they're coming through the land bridge of the UK or we're going directly from Ireland to France, all these things are complicated. And this is what we were saying in the script. We all knew this was never going to be easy. It is easier if you remained within the single market, if you stuck with the same standards as the European Union. But as you know, that was the fundamental question that a lot of the Brexiteers were exercised about. So there are evolving solutions.
Brendan, the outcome with the UK is obviously, the protocol has obviously been required a lot of cost and will require a lot of cost to implement. You mentioned the fisheries outcome. Is Ireland happy with the way that's come?
No, because whereas fisheries is a very small part, and again, I'm conscious that Norway has always, fisheries is a big issue in Norway as well. It's a very small part of our industry, of our economy, but it's regionally very important. It's on the west coast, it's in small towns, it's in islands, It's in places where the economy is much more dependent. I can't remember what the ratio, but it's a very small percentage. So that was very problematic, and it was difficult, and it was one that Ireland had to say, for the overall benefit, including of island communities, and including of fishing communities, this is what we have to agree. But we were, I think the fisheries were probably the least satisfactory part of the negotiations and agreement.
Robert.
Your Excellency, I'm Robert Johnson, a member of the local branch. You have said that Ireland is going to try very hard. Can you hear me?
Speak up a little, Robert, if you could.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me all right
I can
now?
hear you, yes, sorry.
All right. Can everybody hear me? You've said that Ireland is going to try very hard to negotiate with Britain to resolve issues in the coming years. As a member of the EU, how much, putting it in simple terms, to what extent are your hands tied as a member and bound by EU rules?
Well, as I say, we have, I think the important thing to remember again is we have benefited incredibly from the European Union. Yes. We've transformed. Those of us, I should have introduced my colleague as well, Eamon Robinson, the Deputy Head of Mission. My apologies to him, and I forgot to. We've seen, Ireland has been transformed by European Union membership. Prior to that, 70, 80% of, I can't remember the state, somewhere in Ireland, 70, 80% of our economy was dependent on the UK. So when the UK got a cold, we got a flu. When we joined the European Union after 1973 and the balance of the trade changed, it was hugely beneficial to us. I can't remember the ratios of exports that go to the UK and the EU, but more go to mainland Europe, the rest of the EU, let's say, than go to the UK. So we know where our vested interest is in. I mean, it's a political decision as well, yes, but it is as much an enlightened self-interest that our economy has blossomed. The EU were hugely, when we were developing within the European Union context, developing country, and the investment in helping us to build roads and infrastructure was incredible, gave us an incredible start, and in education as well. So we've seen that, and we've seen the alternative. And frankly, to be honest, I can't see how any of the, whatever, the 450 million left and the 50 million, 500 million there before, how anybody could see that as beneficial to leave that. I don't think Irish people could conceive of that. It just is inconceivable from an Irish perspective. There is no significant, or exit, I think it was called at one point.
I'm thinking of the bureaucratic side of the EU, not the economic.
I mean, whatever about the bureaucracy, I think the overall effectiveness of the European Union as a trading partner. I mean, Australia is looking to include in a free trade agreement with the EU. Most groups, most significant blocs in the world want to have a good, strong relationship with the European Union because it's a huge economic force and a political force. And I think for good. I mean, in the United Nations and elsewhere, the contributions we make, both financial and in policy terms, is significant and huge, and could be it can and it has been at times transformative. So I think from an Irish point of view, we've made the right decision, and we've benefited from it, and will continue to benefit from it. You leaving a market of 500 million, I can't see how that can be beneficial.
Okay, Desmond.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm a member here and a councillor. My recollection is that in the Brexit referendum in the north, well over 50% of people were Remainers. Now, we can assume that those would be Republicans, but also Unionists must have voted to remain. Does this have any implications for the long-term status of the north? My remembrance is that under the Good Friday Agreement, there are certain circumstances under which the British government is required to hold a referendum on the future of the province. It does look as though there is something of a rift between English nationalism and unionism, or that would be my estimation, going by the statistics of people who voted to remain in the North. Not dissimilar, of course, from the Scots vote, which was very much in favour of Remain. What are your thoughts about the implications for the future?
Well, you're right, of course. The majority in Northern Ireland voted against Brexit, as it did in Scotland. The majority of the elected representatives in Northern Ireland Assembly have also opposed the Brexit. But to be frank, they're two different things. We don't want one to cross-contaminate the other. The discussion of the constitutional status of Northern Ireland is for the people of Northern Ireland to determine. That's what the Good Friday Agreement says. Ireland obviously has a very strong interest in that, and we have a particular line and thing, but it is up to the people of Northern Ireland to determine that. I think Brexit is a different issue. I think there have been, this is my own Chatham House rules, but anyway, they're public opinion polls. There has been a growth in people in Northern Ireland who would support a united Ireland. But I think critically, this is a different debate, and we don't, that's why all along we've been very careful to say the protocol, this is how this will be done within the context of the relationship with the European Union. The Good Friday Agreement is a separate issue. It's between both governments, it's between the parties in Northern Ireland, and it's between Ireland North and South. It's a different debate. It's a different debate. It will have, there will be consequentials or coincidental happenings, but it's a different debate. And I think we've been very careful all along to say, this is not the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. This is, largely speaking, a pragmatic to ensure that what has happened over the last, whatever it is, since 1998 Good Friday Agreement, the fact that you can travel north and south, that goods can travel north and south, and it has depoliticized the border. It is still there constitutionally, but is demilitarized and depoliticized, and that has been the fantastic achievement of the Good Friday Agreement. So we don't want to do anything that would knock that off kilter. The important thing is to maintain peace, and I said it in our relationship with the UK, is to maintain peace and reconciliation. They're the key issues there. So that's that side of the equation. Trade, commerce, and EU membership, if you like to be facile, is the other side of the equation, I think. So they're two, in our minds, very different issues. Thanks.
Brendan, while we're on the political aspects, Derek McDougall online is asking, what do you see as the implications for British-Irish relations should Scotland become independent?
maybe I'll pass it on. Look, you do. I kind of flummoxed. I don't know. I didn't. That's a very good question. No, I mean, it's again, you know, the way we'd say in Northern Ireland. I mean, if the constitutional position allows for the people of Scotland to have a referendum and they vote to do that, that is their right. I don't have a knowledge of British constitutional law and what it means in effect, but we did it in 1921. So, you know, I think our relationship with Scotland would be very close. There's always been very strong political, so people to people, cultural ties between us. But the original meaning of Scot was an Irishman. It's a medieval Latin term. So I think it's the one country in the world we colonized. Sorry, Eamon has a comment.
Now, the other thing is that if Scotland were to leave the UK, Scottish independence, well, what we understand is they would then apply to be members of the European Union. So then Scotland would be in the European Union as Ireland would be, and Wales and England wouldn't be. So, and our relationship with all of the member states of the European Union is close. So our relationship with Scotland would be close as well. I also imagine we try to assist them, because to actually join the European Union is a rather complex exercise. There's a thing called the acquis communautaire, which I explained to my English brother-in-law a couple of years ago, is 36 books almost, covering environment, everything, you know. So, you know, leaving the EU is complicated, and joining it is also very complicated.
Any other questions? Yes, please. Brad? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Finn Robinson, Master's student at ANU. You mentioned the 6,000 souls who have been lost throughout COVID. How has Brexit potentially affected cooperation in the fight against COVID throughout the past year?
Good question, Peter. I suppose, I mean, they're kind of strange ways. I suppose tourism is incredibly, we can't take it at that level first, taking the medical thing as the supreme concern. But I suppose the economic impact it's had, the movement between the two islands is complicated. I mean, there's a lockdown. We're going through our third or fourth lockdown in Ireland where you can't travel more than 5 kilometres from your home. I don't know what it is in the UK, but they're suddenly very restrictive as well. So I think COVID-19 has complicated everything, and I touched on it. It slowed everything down. It's made political negotiations more, I mean, I know to a certain extent virtual meetings are very convenient in some ways, but you don't have the interaction that you can otherwise. So I think the main thing it's done is it's just complicated everything, slowed everything down, made it more difficult, and accentuated, you know, like, because so much political energy and every government in Europe is directed, and rightly, obviously, correctly, on COVID, everything else has taken second, has taken at least at best second place. So I think that's the best answer I could give you.
Any other questions? Our online questioner, Derek McDougall, has asked another, hopefully not curly question, but he asks, what can the UK learn from the Republic of Ireland about having second referenda on major EU issues, 2002, 2009? Could you explain how this happened?
Just want to make one teeny little correction. It's Ireland, I'm the ambassador of Ireland, not the Republic of Ireland. Referenda, I suppose we have a culture whereby it was it Nice and Maastricht? Yeah. Every major EU treaty that involves a constitutional provision in the Irish we have a written constitution, and any treaty which was interpreted as having an impact in our constitution had to be referred to the people, because only the people can change the constitution. So we've had, I think, 8 or 9 EU specifically related referendums. Am I right? It was Nice and Maastricht. Oh no, well, is it? Anyway,
Yeah. Nice being the most recent.
Nice being the most recent, and I think what the government said is, you know, we are so pro-European from the statistics I just said, 73.5% or whatever it is, you know, what in the treaty is a problem? So they went back and consulted the people, and the people said X, Y, and Z. And the government went back to our EU partners and with good relationships with them. And we said, look, we've got problems with this. Can we clarify that this is what we understand it to mean? We'll opt out of that. Is that agreeable to the other member states? And they were each and every occasion. So I suppose the lessons of it are, and I mentioned a couple of times the solidarity we've had with EU member states, is hold on to your friends very tightly. And the European Union is a collection of, I suppose, friends, very strange at times, the way some friends are closer to one another. And I don't think we have bad relations with any, I'm not saying that any other EU member state has bad relations with another, but we have particularly close friendships with the European Union. When it expanded from 15 to 25, we, at that time, where our economy was flying and we needed workers from all over the European Union. So I think we were one of the first, and given we were also at that point still one of the smallest, we were the first to open up our borders to workers from all over the European Union. So they came from the former 10 Soviet bloc countries that had joined at that point. So I suppose it's remember who your friends are in good times, because they may remember you in the bad times.
Is there a lesson to be learned in this from for Australia in negotiations with the EU over trade?
Well, I think you're in a very good position, and you have a lot of friends. I mean, you have a friend in Ireland, and we said this, and our ministers have said this, and the government have said this, that we have an affinity traditionally, I suppose, within the European Union, because of the ties are tighter with the UK, and so many people have British, indeed, sorry, ancestry. I think we're the second of an ancestry, and we're saying, okay, the UK are gone. You've got an bilingual English, Irish-speaking country, common law. We very good investment regime, very attractive for Australian investment. So yes, there's a lot there's a lot for Australia to learn are in the deal. Free trade agreements work to Australia's advantage and the European Union's advantage. And we, being one of the trading countries par excellence, are very much in favour of a free trade agreement with Australia.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Brian.
I'm Brian Ely, council member here. Now that the UK is gone out of the EU, does Ireland expect, or the Irish Republic expect, that there will be more trade and more investment coming from other EU countries into Ireland?
Well, we always hope there is, absolutely. We are, we have a very investment-friendly environment. We attract it from wherever it wants to come, European Union or elsewhere across Europe. I suppose the biggest ones, investors, are usually, of course, the Americans. I think the British are way up there, and I'd imagine that would continue. It is possible, there's already been some displacement. I think Bloomberg had an interesting article about two weeks ago talking about the businesses that have been displaced from the City of London into other European Union countries. And I think we're the third highest recipient of displaced financial services and related, those kind of city things in the European Union. I think the Germans, obviously enough, maybe the French and Dutch, but I think we're either third or fourth. So yes, I would expect we would get more of that. But as I say, what I think we will really, where I hope and where we're planning and where our whole thrust in our promotional is we are in the European Union, we're staying there. You have all the advantages of coming to Ireland for all the cultural, linguistic, legal reasons, and you have the benefit of being in a market of 450 million. And it's a good selling point, and it convinces a lot of we've already been very successful. I think we're the fourth largest investment site for US investment in the European Union, and given our small percentage of the economy of the European Union, we've totally disproportionately big share of US investment. And I would expect that would continue. And equally, as you asked, Brian, the question, yes, from other European Union countries, some of it will be displaced from the UK, and some of it will be fresh investment, I hope, as well.
Brendan, slightly off topic, but of interest, I'm sure. Claire Murphy from the Celtic Club in Melbourne,
Oh, okay.
who you know well, I'm sure, is asking about the Irish diaspora and how is Ireland continuing to focus on diaspora strategy, given restrictions on community activities around the world and limited international travel?
Well, Ireland's diaspora is incredibly important to us here in Australia and right across the world. We say there are 70 million Irish diaspora around the world. I think 34 million of them are in the US. We believe it's an underestimate, but in the 2016 census, 2.4 million Australians said they had Irish heritage. No less a man than Prime Minister Scott Morrison recently said in a piece that he had 1 in 4 Australians have Irish heritage. I'm happy to go along with the Prime Minister's figure. So our diaspora is incredibly important to us. They've been incredibly important to us in every way. They've been important to us politically, historically. To get back to the question of investment, it's very important that we have Irish people, both Irish born and people of Irish heritage in various locations. And when we get the pitch to them, and everything else controlled, there's a good economic argument, there's a good legal basis on which to make the decision, and they have Irish heritage. That's very good. So we've exploited it indeed, very positively. Also, I suppose a more caring level, if I want to put it that way, in a consular level, we invest significant amount of money in looking after the welfare of our communities abroad. Here in Australia, we fund at least 4 advice centres. We have one in Perth, one in Sydney, one in Melbourne, and one in Brisbane. And they provide the equivalent of consular services to our citizens in those cities. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have given additional resources to them to help the more vulnerable members of our community. We've also invested in, and I think every one of us can relate to this on a personal level, we've also invested in projects particularly aimed at mental health, because this is a particular challenge because of people, some who can't get home for family occasions like funerals or births, or to see their grandparents or their parents or their siblings. And we've invested some in that. So we value our expat, our diaspora very, very much. They've been tremendously useful to us for the centuries. We've been coming here since the mid-19th century, and they're important today. And they will even be important in things, again, to go back to things like the EU Free Trade Agreement, because we have the Irish Business Chamber, we have the Lansdowne Club, we've other networks, we've Enterprise Ireland, IDA Ireland, Tourism Ireland. We've all these groups working with our diaspora to maximise the economic advantage to both Australia and Ireland.
Ambassador? Yeah.
Thank you. Brendan, you summed up. So I just wanted to add that, of course, Ireland has done extremely well inside the European Union. You have gone from being not one of the richest to being the richest, wealthiest country in Europe, alongside Norway, Luxembourg, and then Switzerland outside. So you benefit immensely. We have in Norway had 2 referenda, and both times the people said no thank you by a small margin, 51, 52% against 72, and then lately in 1994 when everyone else joined. But we entered into a very quickly agreement, a European Economic Area Agreement, which for all practical economic purposes makes us a member of the European Union, the single market, all the 4 freedoms, and Schengen later on. Yeah. We are not a member of the customs union. We kept fishing and farming outside, and that's been working very well for us and for the European Union. So we trust that this arrangement will stay and prosper for both parties, including Ireland as well. Now, just 2 questions on that. If you want to, why do you speculate? Why would the British not choose a Norwegian model? And secondly, how does it actually work with Northern Ireland being inside the single market and the customs union? Because that's a different system from Norway again. I don't quite understand it. Excuse my ignorance. Thank you.
Sorry, your first question again.
Yeah. It was why would the British or the English
Norwegian model
not choose the Norwegian model, which was an option for them?
Firstly, I think you'd have to ask the British High Commissioner that question. I don't try to interpret British political expressions. No, I think it's, I presume it relates to the question of sovereignty and what you control within your destiny and your economic outlook and customs. Well, you're not into customs union, but the single market and the control standards that you must meet. You must meet you must match rather the EU standards. And I think that was part of the debate in the UK that, bureaucrats in Brussels were determining whether a banana could be curved this way or that way, which they may have been doing, but so I think that's one thing. Then I forgot your second question. Sorry, I'm getting so caught up in my own thoughts, Paul. I'm sorry.
Ireland being in
Well, I think this is the whole political debate, which is very, very active on the island, and particularly in Northern Ireland, particularly within shades of unionism, the Democratic Unionist Party in particular. I think what has been agreed is that there's kind of there's an imaginary customs line down between the 2 islands, between Ireland, the island of Ireland, and the island of Britain. And there are customs controls at the ports of entry into Northern Ireland, Belfast and Larne. Can't remember if Derry is included. But there are customs controls there. But there's been a lot of debate. That's why I think on at least 3 occasions you have heard me saying the protocol is there because Brexit introduced these complications. And I think that's how it's been resolved. So we would have no border on the island of Ireland. Goods produced in Ireland or in Northern Ireland can come back and forth and go from Belfast to Paris. But if they're coming from London to Belfast, there is agreed by the British government as part of the agreement. There is a customs check at Larne or Belfast or whatever port of entry it is using. But the first question, as I say, that's to the British High Commissioner.
So the single market standards apply all in
Yes,
the
in Northern Ireland. Yeah.
Automatically or by
Yes.
every?
Yes, since the agreement came into it, the protocol says, that's what the protocol says. Yeah, that's since the introduction of the 1st of January, yeah. Which causes, you can imagine that there is, I mean, as in every issue, not every issue, that's simplistic, but as in major issues like this, it's subject of very active and at times acrimonious political debate in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
Irina Zabortseva, I work for a public department, but I'll refer to my doctoral alma mater as affiliation Sydney University because I'm not here on behalf of my current work. I've got two questions, if possible. One, statistical. You've mentioned data dependency on British economy prior to joining European Union, 78%. How has it changed after joining European Union? And second question, maybe political, maybe personal art preference. You've mentioned your socks as symbolical related to political symbolism. Is there any symbolism in your tie?
My wife bought it. Does that qualify as political? It's from the Museum of Fine Art in Boston, because I was Consul General in Boston. So I suppose tangentially you could say it's got some political significance. But anyway, no, I'm sorry. My cufflinks do represent government buildings in Dublin. This is where the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister's office, is contained in that building. So I try to subtle messaging, my socks, which I've been displaying since the beginning, and my cufflinks, which I've now disclosed. But the second question, I'm sorry, was the the only one statistic I can quickly remember is I think 40% of our agricultural produce goes to the UK. But as I say, the overall balance is hugely now in terms of value, clearly in terms of value, mainland Europe is more important to us than the UK. Historically, as I said, 70-80% of our exports went to the UK in value or in tonnage, I can't even remember, probably not far off from both. So that's changed very dramatically. The area which was most exposed to the Brexit was agriculture, because as I say, it's fresh produce, it's very, short, comparatively speaking, short shelf life, and there was huge markets in the UK, in the major cities and in supermarket chains and the like, and that is now complicated, and some of it cannot be done in the way it was being done, and that's so in agriculture that was the fear. And I suppose the other aspect about agriculture, not to walk in too many tangents at one time, is I suppose agriculture also has very much, since the Good Friday Agreement, has become very cross-border. So in the dairy industry, for example, cows may be south of the border and the milk is sent to a factory north of the border. So sent from Ireland to Northern Ireland, processed there, and then sent back for finishing in a factory in Ireland and exported to the UK. So that's, even at that level, there's the level of produce. 80% of, this is one of the statistics, the irrelevant statistics I remember, 80% of the cheddar cheese produced in Ireland is exported to Britain. So there are lots of dairy farmers in Ireland that are worried where they're going to send their cheddar cheese now that weren't 2 months ago. So we're not as exposed as we were to the UK, the European Union, but we're still the most exposed.
Brendan, there's another technical sectoral question here, if I could convey that online,
Please.
from online, about financial services being one of the area of negotiations, difficult area of negotiation between the UK and the EU. So Andrew Farron is asking, how will the Brexit impede, or will it impede UK financial services being exported to Ireland?
And yes, it will. I mean, they will. I mean, it will follow. I mean, the UK will have to meet the European Union standards right across all this. And if they want to deviate, and if they want to go for that, that will complicate it. And that would mean, yes, it would be more difficult. And frankly, it would almost be, I wouldn't say welcomed by us, but anything that will displace more investment from the UK to Ireland is to our advantage. We don't want that. Well, I'm going to say we don't want that to happen. I'm in a flux. No, but if the UK makes itself less attractive to various markets, it increases Ireland's attractiveness, and we welcome that. And as I was saying earlier, I think Bloomberg, somebody had some statistics recently which show that there has been a displacement to other European Union countries, and we are the third or the fourth highest that have benefited from that displacement. And I would imagine that that may continue and may at some point accelerate when people realize how complicated things are going to be, and we're experiencing it at a very obvious level with exports through British ports and that. And I don't know the financial services sector that well, but I would imagine as the standards may deviate more and more as the UK takes different paths from the European Union, that might accelerate or might increase the propensity to displace from the UK to other EU or two EU member states, including Ireland.
Yes, John.
John Kerrin, local member. Back to agricultural exports. Once British agriculture is not being supported by the CAP, and if a lot of Britain's financial services go to Europe, and a lot of its small companies are now settling in Europe, you might gain, you know, the exchange rate and the situation of British agriculture, unless it's subsidised, might be well to your advantage. These things are unpredictable. I just can't quite figure it all out. I wonder if you have any comment.
No, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, our concern is that our relationship with the UK was still, as I said, the second largest trading partner, and anything that damages that is not welcome by us. So the advantages you're saying that might accrue from other things are very welcome. But again, I get back to that, and I think I said it. I hope I said it. I know I did. We would have preferred the UK didn't leave the European Union. We would have thought it was the wrong decision to make. To leave a market of 500 million with all the internal advantages in that, with the wealthiest club in the world, and to leave it, we don't see how that made sense. But it wouldn't for a smaller country accept that we're much more vulnerable and we benefit to such an extent. So I can't really answer your question because I don't fully understand what was the logic behind it. It's not your question, the British decision.
Yeah. Just to sort of follow up, and this is coming from total ignorance, has there been any change to your defence and security arrangements with Britain out?
Well, a lot of the defence of European defence is done through NATO.
Yeah.
There are, like, Eamon will be better on the defence within the European Union, it's his area of expertise. But that is so NATO, we are not members of NATO, and a number of the member states of the European Union are not member NATO, and of course some non-EU member states are, including the United States, of course. So can you?
Yeah. So yeah, the first thing is that Britain is a member of NATO and it continues to be a member of NATO. NATO has nothing got to do with Britain's membership of the European Union. The European Union has its own policies in the area of defence. It's called the Common Security and Defence Policy. And the European Union actually launches military and naval missions around the world, and it does so using the capabilities provided. I'm sorry, this is all military language. The capabilities provided by the member states. So one of those member states up to now was the UK. So if, for example, you did a naval mission in Somalia to stop piracy, you would need ships from somewhere. And some of the bigger member states would have naval vessels they could give to that mission. And that's the way those missions worked. So obviously Britain leaving the European Union also means that they leave what's called the Common Security and Defence Policy, CSDP. Now, it would be up to Britain in the future. They could join it as a third country, but there's been no negotiations on that yet. But CSDP, the Common Security and Defence Policy, continues. But Britain leaving the European Union is problematical in terms of the European Union's access to capabilities like planes and ships, which Britain gave to those missions.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, Ernst, our time is up. And I'd like to say on behalf of the branch, Brendan, how much a privilege it has been to get your insights, not only on the long and deep history of Ireland in Europe, but also your interests in the modern day relations with Britain and with the rest of Europe, covering all those various sectors. So thank you very much for providing those insights. We do wish you well for the remainder of your term in Canberra and hope to see you at one of our meetings in the future.
Look forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And also to Eamon for his insights.
Thank you very much.
So on behalf of so just to announce, ladies and gentlemen, that the next event in the space is in fact one being held by the National Office, who are having a meeting on the 9th of March. It's in fact a webinar on gender and humanitarian action with a distinguished panel of experts. So you can get the details on that function from the AIIA website. And the ECT branch will be putting together another function by the end of March, and we'll have further details on our part of the website in due course. So till we meet again, good evening.
Thank you. Thanks.